Is it possible for you to buy your first house or your next house or your first rental property with no money down and with no credit? Well, the answer is yes, and in this video I'm going to share with you exactly how to do it. So let's get into it. All right, so you might be looking for a house that you want to buy for yourself, or maybe you're looking for your first rental property. And I'm here to share with you exactly how to get that property, how to get that house with no money down, no cash out of your pocket, and without any good credit. So here's how it works. It's called subject to. And if you've never heard of subject to is basically taking over somebody else's mortgage. Now you're probably wondering, well, Monica, who's going to want to do that? Well, the answer is desperate people who are hanging on to a property that's empty and they have something called holding costs. Now, I'm here in the panhandle of Florida, and in fact, the entire state of Florida right now is going through an influx of massive amounts of inventory of your average middle class and even lower middle class home. And unfortunately, not a lot of them are selling. Some of them are sitting on the market for not only months, but years. And you can actually see that they keep re-upping their contract with their real estate agent because it's not selling. So it'll fall off the market, it'll come back on, fall off, come back on. And a lot of properties around here are not selling. People are slashing the prices. And even worse for them, a lot of them are snowbirds. And so they basically went back home, or they decided to move back to the Midwest or the East Coast or wherever they're from to stay with their family or their kids or whatever the case may be. Got too expensive in Florida, whatever the case may be for them. And so now they're sitting on an empty house that has a for sale sign in the yard, and they have something called holding costs. Now, holding costs, if you don't know, they have to continue paying obviously their mortgage if they have a mortgage. They have to continue paying their insurance. They have to continue paying the utilities, because you don't want to shut off your utilities here in Florida, because everything will just mold over and all of your walls will just start warping in and so forth. So because of the humidity, you can't just shut everything down. At least you shouldn't if you want to keep your house intact. And there's, all these other obligations and responsibilities, that they still have, which is again called holding costs. So what you want to do is, number one, go on the MLS. I like Zillow.com because I like the platform. If you like a different one like Homes.com, Trulia.com, does not matter where you look for houses. Just go to a website and look for houses on the MLS, which is a multiple listing service. Find houses that have not only been sitting on the market for a long time, meaning months and months, but that they're empty. So that is the key word there, empty. They have to be empty houses. And you can tell because a lot of these real estate agents, especially in the state of Florida, they don't waste their money or their time staging properties. And usually you can tell if it's a staged property. Staged property means that they just basically put some furniture in there to make it look like somebody lives in it and just kind of stage it in a way that it looks like a magazine or something. Well, most of the houses around here, especially, or some of your lower end houses, they're not going to be staged. They're just going to be empty in the photographs. So you want to look for properties that have been sitting on the market, that have been sitting for a long time, and that have been empty. Because again, somebody is paying all of that stuff every single month and they're not living there, which means not only are they paying on that house, but they're also paying on whatever house they're in or apartment or wherever they're at right now. They're paying on two properties and they can't afford it. And the longer it's been going on, the more motivated they are, especially if you've seen price drops. So if you've seen that the price drops $2,500 and $5,000 and $10,000 and a year goes by and nobody's biting, that means they're in a severely desperate situation. Now you're probably wondering, well, Monica, I don't live in Florida. What about my state? Well, again, you're going to have to look on your MLS to see what's going on in your state to determine whether or not this is a thing that you can do there. In most cases, it is. I mean, I came from Southern California after living there for 3.5 decades, and I can tell you the inventory is starting to get flushed there as well. There's a ton of inventory that didn't exist even a year ago. So there's inventory everywhere. In small cities and major metropolitan cities, you can definitely find an empty house that has been sitting on the market for a long time that has had price drops of a desperate seller. Okay, so that brings me to step number 2. And step number 2 is really important because this is where everybody screws it all up, where they want to call their own listing, their own buyer's agent. They want to call, Joe Schmo or so-and-so, does property in my family. She's a real estate agent. I'm just going to call her on the phone. Don't do that. Don't do that. You want to call the listing agent directly, the person who's actually on the listing. Okay. You don't want a buyer's agent. You don't want some other agent. You want to talk to the listing agent directly, and you pick up the phone and you call this person and you say, listen, I'm interested in this property. Do you think the owner would be interested in creative financing? And before you finish the sentence, don't finish the sentence yet. Don't give them the opportunity to answer yet. Say, I want to find out if the owner is interested in creative financing, and if so, I can guarantee that you'll get paid your commission. Would you be interested in approaching the owner about this? So again, you want to make sure that they understand that they're going to be getting their commission, because the second that they hear creative financing, they're thinking that their commission just flew out the window. Not that they're getting a commission anyway, because the house is not selling. And they don't get paid unless the house sells. So you want to make sure that they know that you're willing to make sure that they get the commission. Now you're probably wondering, well, Monica, how am I going to make sure that they get the commission? Well, here's how you're going to do it, okay? So this is why we're putting together what we call a subject to deal, where you're essentially taking over the mortgage. So then that moves into step 3, which is if they're listening, and out of 10 people, out of 10 listing agents that you call on 10 different properties, somebody will be interested. In fact, probably multiple somebodies will be interested. You might have about 3 or 4 different real estate agents that'll be like, yeah, this house has been sitting on the market for 1.5 years. It's empty. I'm not getting any money, so I want to hear your pitch, okay? And so that moves me into step 3, which is to talk about exactly what you want to do with the property. Now that all starts with obviously finding out what their mortgage is. So you have to say, okay, well, how much money do they owe on the property? What is their monthly mortgage payment? What is their monthly, what is their interest rate on that mortgage payment? Many times when people bought years ago, which most of the people have that are selling houses right now, their interest rates are way lower than what you're ever going to get today. Okay, we're talking about 4%, maybe 4.5%, even 5% is way lower than what you're going to get today. So you'll be able to take over that mortgage, and if there's extra money that they want, you can do with this, what's called a private mortgage contract on the side. So say, for example, the house is, I'll just throw a figure out there, say it's $250,000 that they want to sell their property for. So say they only owe $150,000 on their mortgage. Well, you can take over that low interest mortgage, and for the remaining $100,000 balance, you could do a private mortgage contract for any interest. You can literally do a 0% interest if you want to, and you can do it for any term. It could be a 10-year term. It could be a 30-year term. It's just an extra payment that you're going to have to make. So then you're essentially going to have 2 payments. You're going to have the main mortgage payment, and you're going to have the side payment, the private mortgage payment for the extra $100,000 or whatever it is. And so this is how it works. You would basically have to, and this is why I talk a lot about this in business credit, is borrow the money to be able to get the commission for the real estate agent, right? And if the property owner wants any down payment, I would offer 0 down, and I've done this many, many times where 0 down is the thing because they're just trying to off the property. They don't want the holding costs anymore. They don't want the mortgage payment anymore. They don't want the insurance payments anymore. You would take over all of that. They don't want the utilities anymore. They don't want to pay for the property anymore. And you come in and you basically say, I'm taking over everything, plus you're going to be getting this private mortgage contract amount every single month for X amount of years. And so the way you protect yourself is you do something called, this is step number 4, a warranty deed. And it's best to have an attorney in that state, a real estate attorney, who can transfer the deed with the county to be able to take it from the current owner into, ideally you'll have a company like an LLC, for example, and then transfer it into the name of that company. So then that way it protects you, to whereas if they change their mind or say, you know what, I don't want to sell it to you anymore, the only time that they would ever be able to get out of the agreement is if you just stop making the payments, which you don't want to do, okay? You want to keep making their mortgage payments. You want to keep paying the insurance payments, and obviously all the utilities, because you have to have utilities to live there, right? And then, of course, you want to continue making your private mortgage contract agreement payments as well. And you want to keep doing that until your term is over with. And so you'll be able to pay a lot less money per month, probably than most rental properties in your area if you do a subject to with the right person. Now, out of 10 properties, is everybody going to say yes? No, that's not how it works. But even if 1 or 2 people say yes, you have some major options. The problem is most people don't have the balls or the gumption to pick up the phone and actually do what I suggest that you do in this video. There's going to be some of you that are going to do it. And those that are actually going to do it, you will be successful doing it. So you can use your house. So this is number 5, which is you want to choose your exit strategy. So is this going to be a house for you? Or is this going to be a house as a rental income property? So if you want to choose to do a rental income property, you first need to assess whether or not you can actually make more per month as a rental than what you would have to pay out for your mortgage and your taxes and your insurance. And if you can't, then it's not a good rental property contender, right? However, Here's a strategy that a lot of people don't understand. And that is nowadays, because of the lack of affordability with most houses, like properties are so ridiculous. Rent is so ridiculous. A lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Zers, they can't afford to move out of mommy and daddy's house anymore because it's just so expensive, right? So that kind of brings me into the new strategy of the new age, which is people doing a lot more roommate types of situations where they don't want to live with their parents, but yet they need affordability and they need to share, the expenses with somebody else. So that's why we want to look for like a 4-bedroom house, like a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house where you can actually rent out each one of those rooms, and you can make more money renting it out. Say it's a 4-bedroom house, so you have 4 tenants in that house, and you'll make a lot more money renting out each individual room than you'll ever make by just renting it out to one family. And so that's the strategy you should use, because you can actually double your income easily, your rental income, by simply doing that. And think about it. I mean, all you need to do is do the subject to strategy with, say, 5 houses, just like that. And you would be able to make a ton of money in rental income just doing what I call the roommate strategy. So if you want to know more about this, I actually have a training which is down below in the description box. You can actually check it out if this is something that seems like it's along the lines of what you want to do. But subject to is a powerful way of doing it. And this doesn't work in a good market. Like if it's a seller's market, the whole subject to strategy simply goes out the window. But because it's a buyer's market right now, and there's just a huge influx of inventory that's been sitting there empty for months and months, and in some cases years, that's the only way and the only reason why you're able to actually get away with using the subject to property, strategy. So take advantage of the times now. Because if you've always had an interest in building wealth in real estate, this is the way to do it, and now is the time to do it. Because if you're going to wait, say, 5+ years from now, when the economy finally fully recovers, and then you're going to try to do the strategy later, it's just not going to work. And then you're going to be kicking yourself going, oh, damn, that Monica chick, she was onto something. I could have gotten all these subject to properties that were empty, that people wanted to get rid of, that they were doing slashes on the prices here and there, and they just were looking for somebody to offer them something for the property. And I could have gotten at least a dozen properties at that time. But you know what? I decided to watch Netflix and, twiddle my thumbs all day. And then here we are 5 years later, and I'm kicking myself because it's too late. So there's always money to be made in downturns of the economy. And now is a time for you to be able to take advantage and actually do these subject to property deals. So again, if you want to know more about that, please go to the description box below and learn exactly how you can not only get a house for yourself that's going to be cheaper than renting an apartment, which is even better than that ultimately you're going to own, but you can also turn this into a highly lucrative rental business as well. So I hope you found that this content was helpful. If so, give me a nice thumbs up, as well as consider subscribing to my channel, because I have a lot more stuff just like this and even more mind-blowing stuff to bring to you as time goes on. This is Monica Main signing off, and I will see you in the next video.